The forest was quiet that morning, with only the sound of dry leaves crunching beneath their feet as Naila and her 10-year-old son Rayaan walked deeper into the woods. It was supposed to be a short escape from the noise of their hard life, a walk through nature, some peace. Rayaan had found a butterfly and was chasing it when he suddenly stopped. "Mama, look!" he pointed, voice low. Naila followed his gaze. There, down in a narrow ditch, half hidden under brambles and dirt, was a man. His suit was torn, his face bruised, and blood streaked one side of his forehead. He looked like he had fallen badly, maybe from somewhere higher up. Naila didn't think twice. "Rayaan, stay behind me," she said, carefully sliding down the edge of the ditch. The man groaned, his eyes opened just slightly. "Please, help me," he whispered. He looked rich, far too polished for this kind of place, but he was hurt. Badly. Naila reached for his arm, trying to pull him up while calling Rayaan to help. Together, mother and son struggled to support the man's weight. "We'll get you out," she said, breathless. "Just hold on." For a moment it worked. He leaned against her, barely standing. But then, in a sudden, shocking burst of strength, the man straightened, fast, and grabbed Rayaan by the collar. "Mama!" Rayaan screamed. Naila shouted, lunging forward, but the man pushed her back so hard she fell into the mud. Before she could get up, he had already taken off into the forest, Rayaan in his arms, his footsteps fast and sure, like he had never been hurt at all. Naila's screams tore through the trees, but the forest gave her no answer. Her son was gone. Naila ran until her lungs burned, until her feet bled inside her worn shoes, but the man had vanished into the trees like a shadow swallowed by the earth. She screamed her son's name. "Rayaan! Rayaan!" But all that answered was the cruel echo of her own voice. The forest was too dense, too quiet, and too vast for a mother to fight alone. By evening, she stumbled out of the trees, clothes torn, shaking. Her hands scraped raw from trying to claw her way through bushes and fallen branches. No one stopped to help her on the road. A passing truck driver slowed only when he saw her collapse by the side of the highway. She was rushed to the local police station, barely able to speak, eyes wild with panic. "I tried to help him. He was hurt. He took my son. He ran into the woods. Please, please find my boy." The officer, skeptical at first, took her statement, but his face gave away what he was thinking. It sounded unbelievable. A wealthy, injured man hiding in the forest, kidnapping a child. It made no sense. "Do you have any enemies?" he asked. "Has anyone threatened you or your child before?" Naila shook her head violently. "No, I didn't even know him. He wasn't from here. His clothes were expensive. His watch alone could feed a village." 2 officers agreed to drive her back the next morning and begin a search, but she couldn't wait. That night, without food or rest, Naila returned to the forest. She followed broken branches and faint footprints, desperate signs that she might still be close. And then she found something. A small blue shoe. Rayaan's, stuck in the mud beside a broken tree stump. Her hands trembled as she held it to her chest, sobbing. That's when she heard it. A faint voice, almost like a whisper. Not from in front of her, but behind. "I told you. You'd come." Naila turned. The man stood there, no longer bruised, no longer pretending, clean clothes, calm eyes, hands empty. Rayaan was nowhere in sight. And the man? He smiled, like he'd been waiting all along. Naila stood frozen as the man stepped out from between the trees, his polished shoes crunching softly over dried leaves. He was calm, too calm, and his eyes gleamed with something that made her stomach twist. Gone was the limp. Gone were the wounds. There was no trace of the helpless victim she and Rayaan had found in the ditch. He tilted his head slightly. "You don't recognize me, do you?" Naila's voice was hoarse, but steady. "Where's my son?" The man smiled, slow and deliberate. "Safe, for now." She clenched her fists. If you've hurt him, hurt him. The man's smile faltered as if offended. No, Naila. I didn't take him to hurt. Him. I took him because of you. That stopped her. What? He looked up at the trees above like he was remembering something long buried. Years ago, when I was a child, I was lost. Not in a forest, but in life. I had no family, no home, no name anyone cared to remember. One winter night I collapsed outside a bakery, starving, dying. And then you came out, barely a teenager yourself, and handed me your shawl. I was too weak to even thank you, but I never forgot your face. Naila's breath caught. She did remember something. A boy, shivering outside her uncle's bakery in the city. She had offered him food and warmth, but her uncle had yelled at her for wasting bread on trash. The boy had vanished the next morning. I didn't think. I didn't know, she whispered. I did, the man said. I remembered everything. And I made myself a promise that night. I would come back, not as a beggar, but as someone powerful enough to never be forgotten again. And when I finally found you, living in poverty, raising a child alone, I knew what I had to do. You kidnapped my child, she spat, rage now overpowering her fear. I tested you, he corrected coldly. You see, Naila, people are kind only when it's easy. But you saw a broken man in a forest, injured, helpless, and you risked everything. That same heart that gave a stranger bread years ago, it still beats in you. But your son? He deserves better. He deserves more than this life. Naila took a step forward, voice shaking. You think money gives you the right to play God? To steal someone's child because you have the power to? His expression hardened. I didn't steal him. I'm offering him a life you could never dream of. A private estate. The best. Education. Safety. Legacy. Name. I can make him someone who changes the world. Naila's hands trembled, but her eyes locked onto his. He already has someone who can change his world. Me. He has love, he has morals, and he has the courage to help others, because that's what I raised in him, not what you can buy. There was a flicker of something in the man's eyes. Doubt, maybe. Memory. Pain. Then he said quietly, I wanted to save him, because no one ever saved me. Naila's voice softened. I did save you, but I didn't do it to be repaid. I did it because it was right, just like helping you in the forest. And now, you want to repay kindness with control. That's not justice, that's fear. Silence stretched between them. Then the man turned, motioned with a small remote device in his hand, and a few moments later, a quiet motor whirred in the distance. A sleek black SUV appeared between the trees. The back door opened slowly. Rayaan stepped out, unharmed, a little confused but smiling when he saw her. Mama! Naila fell to her knees, arms open. He ran to her, and she held him tighter than she ever had in her life. The man stood still, silent, watching them. Go, she said to him, holding her son, tears streaking her face. Take your money, take your ghosts, but never come near us again. For a moment it looked like he might argue, but instead he nodded. Just once. I'll leave something behind, he said, stepping back toward the SUV. Not money, not gifts, just opportunity. If you ever need help, real help, you'll know where to find me. He got into the vehicle, and without another word, it disappeared into the trees. Naila and Rayaan stood alone in the forest, the morning light breaking through the branches above, casting golden shadows around them. She held his face. Are you okay? Rayaan nodded. He talked a lot. He asked me questions. He showed me this big room with toys and books, but I told him I just wanted to go home. She kissed his forehead and held him again. Then that's exactly where we're going. 3 days had passed since Naila returned from the forest with Rayaan. To the neighbors, it looked like a mother had simply found her lost child. No one knew the weight she carried. No one knew the name of the man who had taken him, or the twisted reasons behind it. And Naila preferred it that way. Some wounds weren't meant to be discussed over tea and sympathy. But inside her modest home, something had changed. Rayaan wasn't the same. Not frightened, but different. Quieter. Older in some strange way. At night, he would sit by the window, staring at the stars like he was trying to understand something too big for his small frame. One evening, as she tucked him into bed, he looked up at her. "Mama, why do some people think they can decide other people's lives?" She paused, then sat down beside him. "Because sometimes people get so lost in their pain, they think power is the only way to protect others from it," she said, softly. "But that's not love. That's fear wearing a fancy coat." Rayaan nodded slowly, then held her hand. "He said I was special, that I could be something big if I left this life behind." Naila smiled gently. "You don't have to be big to matter. You just have to be kind and brave, and you already are." That night, Naila finally allowed herself to breathe. She had her son, she had her home, and that was enough. Until the envelope arrived. No return address, just her name, handwritten in neat, sharp letters. Inside it was a single letter, and a key. "I owe you more than you'll ever know. I've spent a lifetime building walls so no one could hurt me again. You reminded me that sometimes a stranger's warmth is more powerful than 1,000 locked doors. I've transferred a small property into your name, not because I think you need rescuing, but because I want to honor the woman who never asked for anything and still gave everything. The key opens a home on the edge of the city. 3 bedrooms, garden and space for your son to dream freely. This is not a reward, it's respect. Use it or burn it. The choice is yours." Naila stared at the paper for a long time. It wasn't the house that moved her. It wasn't the gesture. It was the sentence. This is not a reward, it's respect. She had lived her whole life giving to others, surviving storms, carrying burdens no one ever saw. And for once, someone had looked past her poverty, her silence, and seen her worth. She did visit the house eventually. It was real, quiet, surrounded by trees, with a small gate and a painted mailbox. Rayaan ran across the garden like he'd always belonged there, but she didn't move in immediately. Instead, she started volunteering at the local school, helping single mothers, speaking quietly to women who sat alone during parent-teacher meetings, listening to girls who had no one to confide in. Because Naila had learned something powerful in the forest that day. Sometimes the world doesn't reward kindness right away. Sometimes it buries it. But if you hold on, if you keep doing good, even when no one's watching, then one day, somewhere, someone will remember. And maybe, just maybe, they'll return not with applause, but with respect. And that is worth more than all the money in the world. The small house near the edge of the city had become more than just a gift. It had become a home, a place where sunlight touched every room, laughter returned to the walls, and silence no longer felt empty. Naila stood by the kitchen window, watching Rayaan in the garden. He was helping a neighbor's child fix a broken toy car, the same patience in his eyes that once led him to help a stranger in the forest. That moment, that choice, had changed everything. But she still hadn't heard from the man again. Until today. There was a knock on the door. Not hurried, not hesitant, just calm. She opened it and found a woman in a grey coat holding a folder. "Miss Naila?" the woman asked. "Yes." "I'm from the Murid Foundation," she said gently. Mr. Hassan requested we deliver. This personally. Naila's heart skipped. She took the folder, eyes narrowing slightly. Is this from? Yes, but he's gone now. Car accident. 3 weeks ago. Gone? The woman paused. He left instructions. He didn't want headlines or drama. He wanted quiet hands to continue the work he had begun. Naila slowly opened the folder. Inside was a letter, and beneath it, documents, ownership papers. Bank details, foundation transfer rights. If you're reading this, I've finally left the world that never made room for boys like me. But before I left, I wanted to make space for someone who once gave me a shawl in the winter and never asked for anything in return. I've renamed the foundation. It's now called Rayaan's Promise. Let it be a place where children are not chosen for wealth or legacy, but for kindness. Let it grow under your hands the way my heart did in yours. Goodness is not a gift. It is a responsibility, and now it's yours. Naila couldn't speak. Her hands trembled as she held the pages to her chest. That night, she sat with Rayaan, under the stars, and told him everything. Who the man truly was, what he had been through, and what he had left behind. Rayaan didn't speak for a long time. Then he whispered, "Can we help kids like he wanted?" She smiled through her tears. "We already are, my love. And now, we'll do it even bigger." 3 months later, Rayaan's Promise opened its first shelter home for orphaned children, led by Naila. She didn't build it with money. She built it with purpose, with care, with dignity. The world never knew the full story of the man in the forest. But in a small garden outside a quiet home, a boy once gave kindness to a stranger, and the stranger gave the world back to him. The sky over the city was soft with gold as dusk settled in, and a gentle breeze passed through the open windows of a quiet office on the top floor of the Rayaan's Promise headquarters. The building stood tall, not in size, but in spirit. Once just a modest shelter, it had grown into a nationwide network of homes, schools, and mentorship centers for orphans and underprivileged children. Inside the office stood a young man, tall, confident, and kind-eyed, adjusting the collar of his suit in the mirror. His nameplate on the desk behind him read, Rayaan Hassan Khan, named in honor of both himself and the man who once saw in him something worth saving, and something worth passing on. There was a knock on the door. A staff member peeked in. "They're ready for you, sir." Rayaan took a breath. It was the 10th anniversary gala of Rayaan's Promise. Hundreds of supporters, volunteers, children, and community leaders had gathered below to hear the new director speak. As he walked through the halls, he passed framed photographs. His mother, Naila, in her early days teaching children, the original house near the forest, a faded, grainy photo of a man few had ever met. Hassan, the lost boy who became a billionaire, and then something even more valuable, a bridge between pain and purpose. Rayaan stepped onto the stage, lights warm on his face. He looked out into the sea of faces. Many were children, just like he had once been, staring up with wide eyes, unaware of how deeply their lives were about to change. "My name," he began, voice steady, "comes from two people, one who gave me life, and one who almost took it, only to give it back with something far greater." He paused. "When I was a child, I was taught to be kind, not because it would be rewarded, but because it was right. I was told we don't help others so that one day we can rise. We help others so that we don't fall alone." The room was silent. "I once saw a man in pain try to rewrite his past by stealing someone else's future. But my mother stopped him, not with violence, not with wealth, but with words, with courage, and that changed his life, and mine." He gestured to the crowd. "That's why we're here. To remember that every child is worth saving, that kindness is never wasted, that sometimes the smallest act of love can echo for generations. As the audience stood in applause, Naila watched, from the front row, tears in her eyes. Her hair was silver now, her steps slower, but her heart, her fire, unchanged. Her son was not only a man now, but a legacy, a living story, a protector of the very thing she had once nearly lost: hope. And far away, at the edge of the old forest where it all began, the wind rustled the trees, as if the past itself had finally exhaled.